A spiky hell helmet film.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh.
Lunchroom Manners, the sequel to 50 Shades of Lunchroom. His superpower is being able to find out whether or not something's acidic. The whitest kids you know.
Before lunch one day, a puppet show was put on at school.
Not a very good one.
Called Mr. Bungle Goes to Lunch.
A story of sex and betrayal.
It was fun to watch.
Yeah, these kids look like they're having a blast here.
In the puppet show, Mr. Bungle came to the boys' room on his way to lunch. He looked at his hands. His hands were dirty.
Crusted with feces and missing their fingers.
But Mr. Bungle didn't stop to wash his hands or comb his hair. He went right to lunch.
Mr. Bungle's a disease vector. Ha! Let's all laugh at the proletariat.
Instead of getting into line at the lunchroom, Mr. Bungle pushed everyone aside and went right to the front.
It helped that Mr. Bungle was twice their size and had a mouth big enough to swallow them whole.
Thought that was a fair thing to do.
Oh, you dropped something.
Then in the lunchroom, Mr. Bungle was so clumsy and impolite that he knocked over everything.
Mr. Bungle was dropped as a baby into a brick-making machine.
Finally knocked his...
You know what? Screw this lunch. Jesus, screw it.
The end of the puppet show.
Mr. Bungle died right there like a dog.
Mr. Bungle was funny to watch. He wouldn't be much fun to eat with. Phil knew that a Mr. Bungle wouldn't have many friends.
Yeah, well, Phil doesn't know how to clap, so, everyone has trade-offs.
Later, Miss Brown said it was time for the children who ate in the cafeteria to go to lunch.
Whereas the kids who ate in the cages, no.
Bungle's in this room.
No one but white bread in this classroom.
Well, she just says lunch and everyone just gets up.
Phil stopped to return a book to Miss Brown while his friends went on to the lunchroom.
Did you enjoy Mein Kampf, Phil?
He wrote his number on the book.
7 years later.
Catch up with his friends, Phil almost walked past the boys' room.
He was deep in crypt territory now.
His hands clean? No, they were a little dirty.
Better cut them off.
Remembered that Mr. Bungle didn't wash his hands.
He didn't wash his face either.
Hair was messy, too. Phil didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle.
A single hair is out of place. The dishonor.
Boys' room, Phil was surprised to see some of his friends washing their hands, too.
Yeah, that's what they were doing.
His hands were
not selling drugs.
of soap.
Okay, I think that's enough. Okay, Phil, Jesus.
All that soap.
Then he rinsed the soap off.
Eventually.
Phil dried his hands well, too.
With what he got out of the sandpaper dispenser.
Paper towel in the basket where it belonged. And then he made sure that his hair looked neat.
What hair? If I dig the comb hard enough into my skin, I can make my scalp bleed. Wanna see?
After you, miss.
Edelweiss, Edelweiss.
There was a line of children waiting to get into the lunchroom when Phil got there.
But the bouncer was quite selective.
At the front of the line. They waved for him to go up to the front with them.
Phil was basically an autopilot at this point.
To break into line as Mr. Bungle did. So Phil went to the end. That was the fair thing to do. He would see his other friends inside the lunchroom.
Where they would be reduced to a thin mulch.
The line moved very fast. And soon Phil was inside.
Yeah, they ate all the food, apparently. There's nothing left.
After filling out the prerequisite forms, Phil was able to get a tray.
Then he got his silverware.
From the pots of sulfuric acid.
He put his knife, fork, and spoon neatly on the tray.
In order of lethality.
And then he slid his tray along.
He could do it faster, but fuck this kid.
Phil was a mindless cog in the machine of man.
He always enjoyed looking at the good food in the cafeteria.
But not eating.
It tasted good, and was good for him, too.
Yeah, you keep buying that little
sandwich
myth.
Today, Phil decided to take the hot lunch.
Oh, back up there, Phil. You're getting a little too exciting for me.
Butter, too. And he knew what else he wanted. Milk.
Yeah, maybe he'll get some water at the end of the prison line.
Written on the tray. Maybe there was more milk. So he said, "May I please have some milk?" Phil remembered to say, "May I?" and "please."
As to not rile the lunch zombie.
Yes, there was more milk.
Milk!
Holding back on me, lunch lady?
Phil remembered to say, "Thank you."
And to move slowly as to not incite the zombie's bloodlust.
He didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle, and
Hey, it's Phil's clone.
Phil didn't want to forget his dessert.
Holy crap! Got some lunch with your cake there, Phil?
At the end of the line, the lunchroom supervisor said she had noticed how polite Phil was.
You get to live for another day.
She wouldn't smile at a Mr. Bungle.
It's because Mr. Bungle is a soulless puppet. It would do nothing.
The whitest table in school.
Carefully, pulled out his chair quietly, and sat down.
Scanning, friends acquired.
There was someone Phil liked.
Himself.
He always brought his lunch from home.
Freddy likes to shoot up horse tranquilizers after class.
An apple, a cookie, and milk.
That's a cookie?
I thought that was a peach pit.
Before Phil began to eat, he always put a napkin on his lap. So did Freddy. Everyone liked Freddy. He was very polite.
Freddy looks like he's in pain.
When someone talked to him, he always took time to chew the food.
He looks like he just bit into a cockroach.
Phil noticed how straight and tall Freddy usually sat,
Thanks to the steel pins in his spine.
too.
Freddy's feet.
Phil would rather be like Freddy than like Mr. Bungle.
Phil does his best impression of rigor mortis.
Was Alice.
The Borg Queen.
For example, when Alice sneezed, she covered her mouth and nose. This protected her friends at the table from any germs.
I mean, she would make them eat that at recess later, but...
They ran past their
Teacher, the library's on fire. No, you shouldn't run. Don't run in the cafeteria. Okay.
Phil and his friends wouldn't like to have a Mr. Bungle at their table.
Doesn't look like they want to have any non-Aryans at their table. Jesus Christ. This is the whitest group since Trump's cabinet.
He had eaten everything except his dessert. He saved his cake for last.
Because he's boring like that.
Mr. Bungle would eat his dessert before he had finished the rest of his lunch.
Well, maybe Mr. Bungle understands that no matter what order you eat your lunch in, it's all going to end up the same way.
Phil drank his milk carefully.
Having learned from his friend the noble mosquito.
But not Phil. As each of Phil's friends finished, they didn't leave the table, but waited for all the others to finish eating too.
It was the most awkward hour and a half of anyone's life.
He wiped his mouth and hands carefully with his napkin.
And he never questioned the war in Asia.
Where he sat. He didn't want to leave his place at the table dirty. Everyone at the table cleaned his own place well.
Given their limitations.
That table. It was
I
left.
don't understand. The table is...
Phil thought a Mr. Bungle must have sat there. But Phil didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle.
Is there a person in your family who is a bungle? Perhaps you should report them.
And his table looked fine.
Cheap and wooden like everything there.
Paper or scrap of food was left on it.
Okay, we get the point. Can we move on?
No, Mr. Bungle sat here.
Oh, there's a corner. I saw it. There was a spot in the corner.
Phil's friends were careful to put their waste papers and empty milk cartons where they belonged.
The lunch zombie likes to sleep in a bed of milk cartons.
Phil was certain that Mr. Bungle wouldn't put his paper in the waste basket.
Mr. Bungle's a fucking puppet.
Mr. Bungle probably wouldn't bother to put his lunch tray in the right place either.
Mr. Bungle's mom probably loves him too. Stupid Mr. Bungle.
Lunch was good today.
But what about tomorrow?
And then Miss Brown told Phil and his friends how proud she was of them. They had left their table the neatest in the lunchroom.
All these kids are just empty skulls with brain stems.
No one wanted to be. Are you like Mr. Bungle?
I'm up. What? Oh, God. Okay, I'm sorry.
Lunchtime. Don't be like Mr. Bungle. Have good lunchtime manners.
Mr. Bungle waves goodbye as a shower of blood engulfs him. That's a great image to end on.
Mr. Bungle was arrested for convictions of drug embezzlement. In a moment, the result of that trial.
Alright, well, that was it. Hey guys, if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the taco bell in the corner, and don't forget to take a look at my Patreon. And as always, have a good day. Oh, and if you have any more of these things you want me to do, list them in the comments below.